Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in Sangha. So I'd like to start the Dharma talk by reading a koan. In the Zen tradition, we have recorded teachings of teachers and students asking each other questions and having dialogue about practice. And so this is one of them, and they're recorded in books. This is called the Blue Cliff Record. There are a number of koan collections that we have. And it's interesting with a koan, like people have been, so this is from Tang Dynasty Japan, or Tang Dynasty China. And at this point in the record, there's a pointer, then there's the actual dialogue, then there's like 3 different commentaries from different teachers referencing other dialogues and writing poems. And that's like part of how the literature of the Zen tradition has developed. And it gives you like a flavor of like, there's like this rich lineage. There's like people are turning over each other's words and there's a lightness to that. So I'm not going to read all of the commentary, but in a way, like us engaging with the koan, us engaging with the case, we're engaging with like a real question or, somebody's like urgency around their spiritual practice. And we're in conversation or in dialogue with our bodies, hearts, and minds with like, what is this practice of awakening? What is the spiritual path? And how did our ancestors talk about that? How did they engage with the practice? How did they engage with their own doubt? So here is the case, or here's the dialogue. And you can just take it in and see like what parts of the dialogue, which are usually short and usually don't make sense to our rational minds. They're meant to go somewhere else. They're meant to go to the heart. So here we are. A practitioner at Chuan's monastery was talking to Chuan. And the case is called Chuan's It's Like a Dream. So a practitioner at Chuan's monastery was talking to their teacher, Chuan. And the student said, the great teacher Chao said, so he's quoting another teacher, the great teacher Chao said, heaven, earth, and I have the same root. Heaven, earth, and I have the same root. Myriad things and I are one body. Myriad things and I are one body. So that was the quote from the great teacher Chao. And then this student says, this is quite marvelous. This is quite marvelous. And in response, or we would say, so this is what Chuan does after the student quotes Master Chao. Chuan pointed to a flower in the garden. He called to the student and said, people these days see this flower as a dream. People these days see this flower as a dream. So we're left with the question, well, what's happening here? Maybe you can see them in the garden. having this conversation. And, we don't have non-Chuan saying you're wrong or you shouldn't do that or what are you talking about? Like what the student quotes is marvelous, as the student says, is this beautiful teaching, this beautiful koan that we could carry around with us, maybe for the rest of our lives, as a poignant reminder. All beings, this great earth, the whole universe have the same root. All beings, this great earth, the whole universe have the same root. Nothing is separate from myself. It's basically what he said, or nothing is separate from my body. Or the myriad things and I share the same body. What body is he talking about? What root is he talking about? Right? We can't figure this out, but it's something maybe you know from your meditation practice or from life experiences where you touch something that's bigger than just the thinking mind or the egoic mind. And then non-Chuan goes over to this flower and calls the student over after the student quotes this, quite exquisite text, and says, all being, and says, people see this flower as a dream. So this teaching that is the teaching of the metaphor of dream is a metaphor that's used a lot in the Buddhist tradition to refer to the nature of reality. I talked a little bit about this last week. And it's such a radical teaching that I think our minds can kind of dismiss it or not quite understand it, or not quite want to understand it. Like, really? This is a dream? So part of what he's saying is like, just like all the images, characters, landscapes, feelings, horrors, joys, confusions that arise in a dream have the same root, the same ground, the ground of mind, the ground of awareness. Right? So like everything in a dream, like when we're in the dream, we might think, oh, those mountains are real, or that monster is really going to eat me, or that person just said something really critical and now I feel hurt. And all of that is like real and painful, and the pain hurts and my body hurts, and all of this stuff that's happening in the dream can feel like so real. But then when we wake up from the dream, part of what we realize is like, oh, that was all actually made of mind. It had the same root. Everything that arose was inseparable from the mind, from the dreamer's mind, from our awareness. So it's part of this teaching of all things have the same root. It's true here in this waking life too. And that's part of what we're studying in this practice of awakening. We're starting to recognize the ungraspability of experience. This experience is always changing, and we are starting to notice the root, right? So I made that recommendation during meditation to start to recognize space. And that's another metaphor that we have for the mind ground. It's like space. And so when we start to see like space as the ground of mind, because often what we take as the ground is like our bodies or our sense of self or a single thought. So if like we make anxiety the mind, the ground, and then everything kind of builds around that, or if anger is the anchor, right? We have like a thought of like I'm right. And we can build a world around that. And we're seeing through that lens. And so when we like take our awareness all the way down to the root, to space itself, then we can see that everything that's arising arises within that same ground, is inseparable from it. And that's part of this teaching, this part of this exploration. But Chuan, of course, like a great teacher, he's commenting, he's using this analogy of dream and pointing to this flower, and he's pointing at many different aspects of reality, of this dream. And part of what he's saying is, we see without seeing. People see this flower as if in a dream. So we can, take that on a few different levels. We don't see what's right in front of us because we're distracted. We're thinking about something else. Right? I can be astonished by the things I don't see. Like my partner comes home and says, "Oh, like, did you see the tulips are blooming out front?" And I'm like, "Gosh, how long have they been blooming?" Or somebody, can point to something that changed in a room, and we might not have realized it. So there's, ways that because we're, in our thinking minds or thinking about something else or just busy, we can miss what's right in front of us or forget. So we see without seeing distraction. Then we also see without seeing because we have our projections that we put on things and we put on other people. And so we're seeing them through the lens of our projections. And we're not actually seeing the flower itself. And, these are layers of the dream within the dream. We have our own dreams or our own thoughts that color our ability to be present with what's actually here, to see what's actually here, to see the flower, to actually see the flower. And, those dreams can be distraction, projection, even our own knowledge. Sometimes, somebody points to a flower and before we even look and notice it, we're identifying it and telling them about where it blooms and the different pollinators and seasons. And, we can do that. I'm using the example of flower, but we can do that with everything. The more I've been so interested in the night sky, but I'm learning more about it. And then sometimes instead of just wandering in awe of the night sky, I'm like, there's Mars, there's Jupiter. Which is fun, but it's also sometimes we miss things because we know so much. Yeah. And then another way, and this is part of what Chuan, this one's more subtle, is pointing to is we can take in the colors and the beautiful smell of the flower and see the uniqueness of the flower, but we can still feel like it's separate from us. So we're present, and this is a step in the journey of awakening. We're present, but we're still creating separation. We're missing and it all comes from the same root. We're all interconnected. And so we can feel this kind of distance or aloofness. We're in the observer seat, just witnessing life, but not fully immersed in it from the ground up. So that's another thing he's saying. We get caught in the dream and we forget that it's a dream. And that's part of awakening. So last week I mentioned this teaching that's in the Tibetan tradition called the Lojong slogans. And in the Lojong slogans, the whole purpose or point of the Lojong slogans is to cultivate bodhicitta. So to cultivate compassion for all beings, grounded in wisdom. And the Lojong practice lays out, I think there are 50 some slogans, 5 or 6 for cultivating what's called absolute bodhicitta, and then many more for cultivating relative bodhicitta. And absolute bodhicitta is the wisdom side of compassion, is recognizing this truth of all things have the same root. But that's not the whole teaching. There's also the teaching of compassion and empathy, and we are different. My experience is different than yours, and starting to notice how we create separation and being able to bring compassion to ourselves and others as we navigate this human experience and make all sorts of mistakes in our attempts to navigate this human experience. And Pema Chodron, she writes about the Lojong slogans a lot. In a lot of her books, she's referencing them. One book in particular is called, I think it's called Always Maintain a Joyful Mind. There's another one called Be Grateful to Everyone. And there's this one, Start Where You Are. And so if you're curious about the Lojong, they're beautiful practices, and I'll continue commenting on them over the course of the next few weeks as we explore dream a little bit deeper. So the first of the absolute bodhicitta Lojong slogans is regard all phenomena as dream. And you could think of the Lojong slogans also as steps on the path of realizing bodhicitta. So they have the power to help us presence, come back to ourselves, come back to this moment, step out of the dreams or delusions that we're telling ourselves with our thinking minds and in our beliefs. And in that, they have the ability to re-enchant life. I've been thinking about them that way. I shared last week also a writing from Longchenpa in his discourse on finding comfort and ease in enchantment. So they have this ability to re-enchant life and help wake us up. Help wake us up from the dream to help us see through some of the basic assumptions that we make about ourselves and reality that keep us, feeling stuck in a sense of separation or in a certain habit pattern or narrative about who we are or what the world is. So first we have presencing. And presencing is see the flower. Notice how it smells. Get back into your senses. I think John Kabat-Zinn has a book Coming Home to the Senses or something like that. Coming back to the senses. So that's part of presencing. Our senses are always in the present moment. And they can help us get more space or feel more grounded in this reality. Because a lot of times we're in our fantasies or our narratives about what's happening or our anxieties about what's happening, and we're missing what's really here. And it's not that necessarily the anxiety goes away or the thoughts go away. It's just they're held in a bigger container of reality. They're kind of put back in their place. Sometimes our thoughts, which are just another one of our senses, can take center stage and be the main sense. And all of our other senses get muted. And so presencing is turning up the volume on our other senses, feeling our bodies, hearing sounds, seeing the flowers, seeing the colors around us, seeing the objects, touching the objects. And, as you all know in meditation, as we presence, our attention deepens and we start to notice more. There's more subtlety. We start to get more intimate with our experiences. Presencing can bring us into openness, clarity, a sense of tenderness, which are all qualities of bodhicitta. So I want to read something from Pema Chodron about how she defines bodhicitta. She says, bodhicitta has 3 qualities. It is soft and gentle, which is compassion. So that's one quality. It's soft and gentle, and that she's calling compassion. At the same time, it is clear and sharp, which is called prajna, or wisdom. It's also open. So those are the 3 qualities. Soft and gentle is one, clear and sharp, and open. This last quality of bodhicitta is called shunyata, which we also translate as emptiness. Emptiness sounds cold. However, bodhicitta isn't cold at all because there's a heart quality, the warmth of compassion that pervades the space and the clarity. Compassion and openness and clarity are all one thing, and this one thing is called bodhicitta. And then she goes on, and this next part is pretty poignant. Bodhicitta is our heart. Bodhicitta is our heart, our wounded, softened heart. Now, if you look for that soft heart that we guard so carefully, if you decide that you're going to do a scientific exploration under the microscope and try to find that heart, you won't find it. You can look, but all you'll find is some kind of tenderness. There isn't anything that you can cut out and put under the microscope. There isn't anything that you can dissect or grasp. The more you look, the more you find just a feeling of tenderness, tinged with some kind of sadness. This sadness is not about somebody mistreating us. This is an inherent sadness, an unconditioned sadness. It is part of our birthright, a family heirloom. It's been called the heart of genuine sadness. Sometimes we emphasize the compassionate aspect of our genuine heart, and this is called the relative part of bodhicitta. Sometimes we emphasize the open, unfindable aspect of our heart, and this is called the absolute, this genuine heart that is just waiting to be discovered. So I thought that was just a unique way of defining, a really personal way of defining bodhicitta and really connecting it to the heart. So it's like this feeling that we have in the heart of tenderness or of sadness, or you could call that sadness compassion, of empathy, but it's also unfindable. And so those are the emptiness, compassion sides of things. Like it's unfindable, and yet we know it, that we feel it. And so there's like a spaciousness within this experience that we call the heart of bodhicitta. And there's also a tenderness, ability to resonate with others, to feel. And that's, the conundrum of being human, as we're both. So another way that these slogans can be practice companions is they can be like ways of, like a koan, like that we're carrying around, and can have some like enchantment excursions with them. So we have this slogan, regard all experience as dream. And if we're like kind of holding it tightly and we're like, this is a dream, like that's not so helpful. But like some people mentioned last week, you can drop it into your meditation and notice like, oh, what are some of the dreams that I'm like believing right now that are causing me suffering? And it can kind of loosen things up. Another way I think of working with that slogan is like allowing it to reconnect me with wonderment. So to take a walk or to move through a familiar space or go somewhere new with this slogan, this is a dream, or regard all experience as dream, And in that, you're like empowering whatever landscape you're walking through, whatever characters you meet, as if they were like characters in your dream. And it's a lucid dream. You're awake in this dream. And just notice what happens when you do that. Like, what comes alive? What are you drawn towards? What sensations like arise in your body? What feelings? What colors? What speaks to you? To empower for like moments in our lives, things to be dreamlike. We can reconnect with a certain kind of magic or wonderment in the ordinariness of our lives. Really to see that flower that Nansen held in his hand as if in a dream, like you might wake up from a dream of a flower like that and be like, oh my gosh, I just saw the most fantastic flower in my dream, right? But we see flowers all the time. Do we give them that kind of, allow them to take us to that place of magic or wonderment or enchantment? So yeah, sometimes I definitely do. So, part of this slogan is to allow us into a deeper experience or intimacy of being part of this life together. Opening up the door to the magic and mystery that anything is happening at all. Or that this is happening in all of its expression right here, right now. It's unfolding, and this is the only moment that you can experience it. And whatever it is, this computer and all its computerness, this jade tree and all its jade treeness, this teacup and all of its teacupness, like, whatever it is, like letting it be like a character in your dream that you're meeting for the first time. And then another way of engaging with this slogan is to bring it into the practices of the night, to be a dream explorer, and an onironaut. And we are always being invited from the teachers of old, from the teachings, to practice all the time. That spiritual practice isn't just this thing that happens within 20 minutes or whenever we make time for sitting on the cushion. That is actually like our entire lives. And so we can include in our awakening practice, in our mind training, and in however you regard practice, you can include the space of the night. We sleep for maybe a third of our lives. So much is happening in that night space. Like it can be a fertile ground for attention, for deepening attention, for practicing curiosity, for wonderment and enchantment to come alive, to stay connected to the mystery. And like some people say that they don't dream. I think we dream in different ways. Sometimes maybe we remember the images or the characters or some of the narrative of the dreams. Sometimes maybe more what we wake up with is a feeling or sensation that can connect us to what was happening in that night space. And there are different kinds of dreams, and I think all dreams are fertile places of practice and maybe require different kinds of practices, just like our ordinary waking life. We meet the situations of our ordinary waking life with different kinds of practices depending on what's arising. So sometimes in our night space, we have nightmares, or what's amplified. I think dreams are a great amplifier of things that are happening in the day. So sometimes what's amplified is our fears or our desires or our judgments or other challenging or difficult or painful emotional experiences. And if it's like coming through in the dream space, you could take the perspective like, oh, something's trying to get my attention. Something is rising up to show me like how my mind works, or what I'm processing, or maybe a deeper feeling that I haven't been letting myself feel during the day, during my waking life, but now it's coming up at night. And so we can like bring that into this space of self-study, which is, part of our practice, bringing a kind of curiosity of, oh, like what might, like how do I make space for that, whatever it is, whether it's fear or anxiety, or anger, or some kind of more mysterious emotion that's taking the form of a character in a dream, and getting curious. Last week, somebody talked about painting their dreams. That's one way of working with the dream space, is giving characters life through art. Other ways is writing it down, or if it's particularly troubling dream, bringing it to a therapist. Sometimes, especially if we're people who experienced trauma, the dream space may be a place where trauma is being worked out, and having somebody who can help you work through that can be really healing. Other things that happen in dreams, sometimes people say dreams are just like the mind farting, like just from the day. It's just kind of letting off steam. And if we regard, it's interesting, like how we regard things is kind of like, if we just, if we believe that we live in a world and the universe is punishing us, we start to see that. And so if we believe that dreams are just mind farts, then we see it that way. No matter what happens, we kind of like reinforces that belief. But we can, and this is part of what like koan practice is doing. It's like trying to help us like break free of some of those assumptions that kind of keep us limited of what we think reality is. But sometimes, we have dreams that are they do feel more like processing. In dream work language, they call them day tags. Like we have these things that maybe are things that we were talking about in a day, and they show up in the dream, or clothes that we normally wear, or some objects that we see regularly and they show up in a dream. I had I have this like interesting coat that Shanae got me that comes from Vietnam, and has this beautiful like pink stitching, and it's a blue indigo coat, and it showed up in 2 dreams in a row. And I was like it felt kind of empowered with dream energy. So whenever I see it now in my closet, like it kind of brings me into that like wonderment or enchantment of like, oh, the crossover of dream and what we call reality or waking life. And one of the questions that I find so intriguing that goes back to this koan is like, all things have the same root, and like, mind is constant in waking and in sleeping, or awareness is continuous. And so it's like, oh, the same mind that saw that in the dream, is it true? The same mind that saw that in the dream is seeing that now. It's arising in the same space of mind. So that's intriguing to me as well. And so like those images that appear in a dream that also appear in your waking life can be like mindfulness bells of like, hey, this is a dream, or wonderment bells, like, hey, like pay attention here. Like you're connected to a magic or a mystery. This universe isn't, as solid or coherent as you think it is. That's good. Dreams also, can be places of learning. There are many stories of scientists having discoveries in dreams. Less romantic, but my my aunt is a crocheter, and she says that if she gets stuck on how to do a certain stitch, she sleeps on it, and often she'll have a dream that shows her how to stitch the next stitch. I used to have that when I did yoga. I was like learning arm balances, and I would have a dream. I wouldn't be able to do it, and then I would have a dream that I could do it, and I would have a little bit more of ability to do it, which just it's an interesting thing that like learning can happen in dreams. Spiritual insights can happen in dreams. I've had many people share like, something that they were working on, self-love, and then they have this very powerful dream of just like so symbolically shows like that their psyche is getting it, like that self-love is happening, and or all sorts of things. I've during retreat have had so many like deep dreams that are still with me, that like revealed something that I knew but like didn't have words for, and now I have like a symbol for it, because dreams can speak in symbol. Dreams also have the ability to like amplify our senses. So people have told me of seeing like the bluest blue, or feeling love in the most like unfiltered way in dreams. And then there are people who have like dreams that are more for the collective. Like Jung had this dream of like a sea of blood, like right before the First World War. He's recorded so many of his dreams. Mahamaya, the Buddha's mother, had a dream, and that's how she knew she was pregnant. She had a dream of an elephant piercing her side with his tusks. And Keizan Zenji, a teacher in the Japanese Zen tradition, one of the founders of Soto Zen, he would record his dreams and like ask questions to his dreams, and like made decisions about like who to ordain, when to ordain them, where to build temples, based on dreams. So there's so many. I just like to remind us of this every once in a while, and remind myself of just like the richness of what is possibly happening in the night. And I find that, sometimes talking about dreams, or like setting an intention, asking for help before going to bed, like from the deeper mind, are all like ways of like staying connected to the mystery of dream, and, the mystery of the night. Because it can be really easy to like, okay, sleep is like something I need and I have to do it, so I'm just going to do it. And maybe I have some rituals to help me fall asleep, but I kind of don't think about what is happening at night. The lights go off and it's just like, forget about it, go unconscious for a while and then come back. But like, we can allow, just the same kind of mystery that we can bring to, or inquiry that we can bring to Zazen, we can bring that into the night space. And this is, back to that koan of like remembering that we all share the same root, or even bringing this inquiry of, how does dream practice open the heart of compassion? In a lot of like fields of dream work, a lot of dream workers recommend like see all the characters in the dream as yourself. And that's like one way. It's one step to all beings share the same root. Is, well, what if every character in the dream, including the characters that maybe are causing harm or are my enemy in the dream, like what if they're all me? How are they all me? And how does this open the heart of compassion if we can entertain or step into maybe some of those more unsavory characters and see from their eyes, see their perspective, understand what assumptions they might be making? One of the things that Pema Chodron says about this slogan is, it's no big deal practice. Which is good. So I'll end there.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.